And we're up and running. It is an amazingly beautiful day here in the Midwest, and my newfound friend in Ireland has alerted me to the fact that they're having an equally marvelous expression of spring going on. This is my fifth episode of A Course in Miracles Discovery, and my guest today is Dr. David Maloney, who is today, he's actually centered pretty much right in the center of Ireland, there in the Republic of Ireland. How are you this morning or this afternoon, David?
Great, and thanks a million for inviting me onto your channel to talk about the course. And you're quite right. It is a beautiful day here in Ireland, which is in itself maybe a bit of a miracle. Yeah, I'm right here in the middle of Ireland, and I'm excited to talk about the course because I've seen a few of your other interviews on this, and I love the opportunity to discuss the course and talk about how I came into the course and my own life. So I appreciate the time.
Absolutely, I'm very excited about this, and it was definitely a series of synchronistic phenomena that brought us together, which was delightful for me. And you had reached out on one of my other videos, and there was a definite alignment here for pursuing this. So, David, tell us, when you were just a wee lad, what was your life like before you were involved in the Course in Miracles and before you were really up and running as a young adult in Ireland? What was your foundation, your environment, where you started off?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think, I suppose, from my perspective, I would say I've studied the course now for about 7 or 8 years. And I suppose when I talk to a lot of other people who do the course, a lot of them find it, at different times in their life. And there's probably one common factor, of course, it's when they get to the point in their life when they say, there's a humbleness that comes in, and they say that they're ready to see things another way. So my life when I was growing up in Ireland, Chris, was I was raised in the Catholic faith, very typical upbringing in Ireland. Religion was sort of a structured thing in my life, as it is for most people here in Ireland, at least. And I went to mass, I did all those things. Was confirmed, had my Holy Communion and everything else. And, I would say, I did all I was quite an involved practice in some sense, because we used to sit down and we used to pray together sometimes, and we would even read the Bible sometimes. We would say the rosary together. And I can, looking back, it wasn't, although I did leave sort of organized religion behind me, there are some aspects to it that I did like, and I still appreciate today. I think it gives people sort of a sense of community, and there is a coming together, even if it's just for something like prayer. But as I kind of grew older, I didn't, the image of God that I was sort of being thought about in Catholicism didn't appeal to me. It was this idea of I think we project a lot of things onto this image of God, which is this vengeful, jealous God who is, looking down on us, and we are here and we're sinners and we have to repent and atone for our sins. Obviously, just rejected that flat out, and I moved away from organized religion and even spirituality for many years. So I went through, school, I went through university. And it really wasn't until I got to sort of the end of my university, a few years before the end of my university experience, that I started to open up to something. This sort of, I would say, a profound sadness in my life, underneath most of the things that were going on externally. And, to most people, I would seem like I was probably quite normal and happy. But there was this element, this sort of a missing piece. But I thought, because of my religious upbringing, that, well, it can't be God. God is not the answer here. It can't be that, because I've tried that. I classified myself as an atheist. I was done with religion, done with spirituality. So what would happen then is I was sort of between a rock and a hard place, where I had this void that I didn't know how to fill it, or a lot of things in my life weren't making sense, and I was looking for a solution, but I didn't want to go back to the way it was. So at that point, I kind of asked for, not even consciously, but it was unconsciously, a sort of a questioning or an answer I put out there, which was, I am open to something else, and I don't know what that thing is. And at that point, it was strange. Things started to pop up. Things started to happen. So the first thing that happened for me was I found a book, Course in Miracles. It was a book. It was about Kabbalah, and I picked up the book thinking, well, this is probably not for me, but I'll give it a go. I had become a little bit more open-minded, because I think I probably had to be at that point, and did a lot. But there was one idea in the book that sort of a light bulb moment for me, and it was just a description of what God is, and it was very, very different to the God I had come to know through religion. And it basically described God as he's not this separate entity to you. It basically said that God and you are one and the same, and any idea of a separation between the God and the Son of God makes the entire thing meaningless. So there is no real God without you, and there is no you without God. And when I heard that idea, it was like, that was all I needed. Personally, that was just it. That was the door. And everything else sort of just fell into place from there. That was all I needed to hear, was that idea. So I was almost instantaneously spiritual at that point. At least I was far more willing to be. From that point on, I did start to study spirituality more. And I kept hearing all these great teachers talking about this thing called A Course in Miracles. So I didn't know what this Course in Miracles was. What is it? But I couldn't ignore the fact that it kept coming up, and I kept hearing people talk about it, even in very strange places. I never heard that term before, but yet I started to hear it again and again. Actually, I picked up a copy of A Course in Miracles, and I started to read the Course in Miracles, and instantaneously I loved it. I absolutely loved the Course in Miracles. Time I picked it up, it wasn't always easy for me to understand it or to practice it, but through a lot of great teachers here in Ireland, and there are many of them, I started to learn from them, and they helped me a great deal sort of understand a lot of the ideas. But really the thing that got me sort of to really sort of accept the Course in Miracles was through the practice of it and implementing it and doing what it says in the book. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, Chris, but that's kind of how I started off. That was my background.
Well, now, you undoubtedly, had a vision for your future as you launched into school and ultimately getting into the university. I know that you're also a very musical soul. Was there ever a period when you were having a little bit of a challenge deciding, do I want to go in this direction, that direction? Should I become a musician? Because Ireland certainly has spawned so many musicians for so long, but you ended up taking a different path. So how did you sort all of that out?
I wouldn't say music for me has always just been a passion. I've always loved music, and I've played music for about, I suppose, 15, 20 years actually now, probably. So I've been playing music for quite a long time. It was never really a thing that I thought I would actually career. My career, I suppose, was always I thought I had it figured out when I was younger. I thought it would be education. I thought I'd be a teacher, and I still teach to a certain degree now, but back in my life there was sort of an invisible hand guiding it, because the way I see A Course in Miracles is it's a spiritual book, you could say, but for me personally, I see it as a book on psychology. Now it integrates psychology and spirituality together in a way that no other book I've ever read has done. But I would make decisions back in my life, not really knowing why I was making them at the time. So I had this inclination to study psychology, coming from a sort of a teaching background. So I guess I was always kind of interested in the mind and how the mind works and why it's important. So I went into university and I studied psychology, and I went on to study psychology as a postgraduate. And my area was cognitive psychology. All the things I've read on it, you know, I was in the academic background, so that's another thing about the course that I sort of, when I read about the background of A Course in Miracles, it appealed to me as well because of Helen's background, because she came from that academic background as well. And you know, the political games and the fact that her colleagues weren't getting on well together, and they asked for another way of seeing things. You know, I could really relate to Helen's story. But I went into psychology, and of everything I studied in psychology, it gave me a lot. It gave me, the first thing I suppose it gave me was a real sense that people are not as logical as they think they are, or egos are not very rational beings. And that was an important part. I think, you know, A Course in Miracles certainly would suggest that that's true. It talks about the irrationality of the ego and the inconsistency that is foundational in the ego. So I look back and I see, you know, while I was doing and pursuing things in the world and in my life that didn't ultimately bring me to the place, you know, that I predicted it would go, they've all sort of played a part me to the point where I am now, where I'm doing sort of work that, and it's work psychology, but everything I do, I have to be honest, I always bring it back to the course because it's the most profound thing I think I've ever read. It even has a section. I'm a trainee psychotherapist now as well, so the section about psychotherapy is sort of my foundation for what I'm going to do as a psychotherapist. So I wouldn't say music has been there in the background, and it's been sort of a passionate thing for me, and there was, I suppose, you know, when you're younger and you want to be, you know, you have these aspirations to be some sort of a famous musician or whatever. There was that, you know, a bit of letting go around that, I suppose, at a certain point. But I think at this point in my life, I'm quite happy with the direction I've taken, because I'm helping people, I'm helping people sort of see through illusions in their lives, and in doing so, I'm kind of helping myself and strengthening the ideas in the course that are helping me sort of wake up at the same time.
Very good. Well, now I know that with myself and a lot of people I've dialogued with about the Course in Miracles, once you pick up the course, a lot of events start to unfold, a lot of synchronicity or a lot of crisis or a lot of upheaval, depending on where you're at. So when you first started working with the Course in Miracles, did you find that you were running into like a crisis period or a resistance from the ego? And did you notice friends and family were looking at you from a little bit different angle?
I noticed friends and family started to notice me in that I became a lot more peaceful and less confrontational. I started to see the folly in arguing. I didn't see a point in arguing anymore because I kind of had this understanding of what we're really arguing about. And I used to be, you know, I used to get drawn into these arguments about politics and everything else. And I sort of let that go, and that was change. In terms of there was a few things, I suppose. The first thing I mentioned, I kind of got into the course near the end of my university experience. And a lot of the work now I do now is with students. Now I don't go into schools or colleges and say, "Oh, here I am. I'm going to teach you about A Course in Miracles." Everything I do is based in A Course in Miracles, but a miracle I received from myself when I was in university. And it was, I suppose, the first big new perception or way of seeing that I experienced. So in my childhood, I had a lot of, ideas of littleness about myself. I always felt I wasn't good enough, or I couldn't do things in the world, couldn't be successful. And the first thing that the course helped me with was the self-sabotage that was going on in my life. And it really helped me to see why I was doing it to myself. So one of the things I work with now with students is procrastination, which is a big problem. And it's entirely explained in A Course in Miracles, why we do it. And what I figured out about myself was I would procrastinate because of a split mind and indecision. So university was I would procrastinate in work. And I realized that I wasn't going to get anywhere. And, I was sort of holding myself back. So this was causing a lot of anguish in me and a lot of anxiety and fear. And I kind of got to a place of quietness, and I had been doing this. This was a pattern that went on for years for me of constantly building stress and self-sabotaging myself. But eventually I got to the point where I said, you know what, there has to be another way here. Maybe this is what the course is talking about. So I asked for another way to see things. It was a lot of people in psychology, they say things like, healing, it takes time to heal things. And from my point of view, healing can take place in an instant. It just takes a fraction of a second to heal a part of your mind that needs healing. And in an instant, I went from someone who was unconsciously hurting myself and unconsciously self-sabotaging myself to make myself feel guilty. I was doing the procrastination thing to make myself feel small and feel guilty. And as soon as I saw the purpose behind what I was doing, I said, you know what? So I just kept observing the pattern as it went on. And I was going to Source, going to Holy Spirit, kind of asking for help in that. And almost instantly, I just stopped the procrastination. Like a new way of seeing myself. I started to notice that I was hurting myself actively, and I just chose to stop doing it. So that's something I talk about a lot with students. That was a big change in my life from the time around the beginning of my of studying the course. Literally, there was this thing where I picked up the course, and what I got was this idea that Holy Spirit was telling me that the first thing we need to do here is reverse the way you see cause and effect in your life. Back then, I would view the world and I would see external things happening. And I would assume that that thing externally to myself is the cause of my joy or my misery. And a bit of a victim of the world. So it wasn't because you said, a lot of people have a tumultuous time and things happen and chaotic things happen and change comes about. My journey, I have to say, I found it quite fun. I enjoyed it because it was like Holy Spirit was saying, you know what, we're going to do a little experiment here with a few things. And this was only phase 1, mind you, but it was saying, okay, I'm going to show you that you're creating your world. So it said, what do you want? The Spirit asked me, what do I want? So I said, well, you know what? I want X, Y, and Z. All these little ego demands that I had about money and work and various things. And I put my mind and I focused and I to those things, and I started to manifest them. To my amazement, it's this the secret type thing and manifestation stuff, and it worked. And I was very specific in what I asked for. So when it did manifest, I couldn't really pretend like I hadn't created it. Now that was phase 1, as I said, because after a while that stopped, because I figured out, and the Spirit told me, okay, well, we've done that. You've seen that. And I had to accept that what I was manifesting it was the ego manifesting it. So obviously, none of the things I manifested really led to any lasting happiness or peace. In fact, it was, in a lot of instances, it was quite the opposite of that. But it did show me that my mind is very powerful, and the thoughts and judgments that I'm using are creating my experiences. It's kind of changed a little bit to be more about accepting, as the Course says, that I don't know what I want. I don't know what's in my best interest, and I need help to figure that out. You know, I can't make that decision alone. I don't know what it is I want. So maybe not the chaotic experience that many people have had, and who knows what, you know, forgiveness lessons lie ahead of me. But right now, I would say it was an interesting journey, an interesting transition, and a peaceful one. You know, it was a. I think there's two ways you can maybe wake up. One is through sort of like a really traumatic event or experience that to your knees, where you sort of go through the dark night of the soul, and it brings you that place of complete surrender. But mine has been more of a gradual one, where I'm letting things go gradually, and I'm quite grateful for that, to be honest.
Yes, it's the fewer waterfalls we have to go over and tumultuous adventures we have to address, the better off we are. Well, now you're using the Course in Miracles in conjunction with, you know, this next phase of your career. But if you had to highlight one particular area of A Course in Miracles, what would you put your primary emphasis on, as far as what is it that you see as the most useful tool for you right now where you're at?
Well, right now, I would say the last probably 6 months of my study of A Course in Miracles have been the most difficult and the most profound, because as I kind of alluded to earlier, what I was using the Course for in a very subtle way was to fix my life, to fix my external life. And I think that was getting in the way of my understanding of what forgiveness actually is. So A Course talks a lot about, you know, you in every instance of your life, you need to consult your higher self to make decisions. And I would be going about my day-to-day life, or maybe a job opportunity would come along, and I'd sit down and say, you know what, I'm not sure what to do here. I need to consult my higher self. So I would go to my higher self expecting some specific guidance on, yes, I think you should go for job number 1 because that's your path. And really, it was, I'm not sure everyone would agree with this. Got a sense, or a new way of seeing that my higher self isn't really that preoccupied with my day-to-day life, my ego existence here in the world. It's not very preoccupied with me, because it is. But the day-to-day stuff, I don't really do the decision making on that level anymore. And sometimes I do, but I do it when I notice myself thinking I have a decision to make in the world. That's the interesting thing, because when I think, you know, should I take job A or job B? What forgiveness is now, or what decision making has become now, is just me being still and saying, okay, Holy Spirit, I want you involved in this decision. And rather than giving me advice, the answer is never really all that different. The input I get, the input is always comes in the form of a gentle reminder. And the reminder is, very simply put, this decision doesn't matter. You are safe no matter what option you pick. You cannot go wrong here, because you can't go right here. You need to be completely indifferent about this decision. And from that sense, from that sort of higher sense of peace comes to me. And then I just choose whichever one is normal. I have now is I'm just living a normal life. I don't really try to do any spiritual deeds or you know, anything strange. I just focus on that process of forgiveness. That's what forgiveness to me is right now, or that's what decision making is to me right now. Always when I notice myself thinking I have a decision to make in the world, decision is whether or not I choose to join or I choose to do it by myself. So it's been hugely helpful in terms of making decisions. Well, I think the other one that comes to mind, Chris, is this idea. It's a passage that I always love, and it's about you need do nothing. You need do nothing in the world. And for someone from my background who was very preoccupied with achieving things and work ethic and productivity and pushing myself all the time, that was a nice release, you know, do nothing in the world other than just join. Came with that realization. But I think that what that section means is, yes, you need do nothing. There's nothing to do, but there's nothing to not do as well. It's about, you know, whatever your forgiveness, whatever you're attracted to do in the world, whether that be, you know, go and get a job or go and get some money or go and achieve musical goals or whatever it is, go and do that. Don't leave that behind. Pursue whatever it is you think you need in the world, because do it is sort of equally as silly. So it's just, I suppose the emphasis has shifted from, yes, everything is about out here, to I just continue out here, but with help. That's I suppose what the course has given me.
That makes sense. And as far as going back and looking at relationships, how about the people that you had perhaps envisioned a future with, people that, you know, you wanted to have an intimate relationship with, or a partnership involving, you know, some kind of productivity? What's going on with different parts of your life now about relationships in that format?
Well, I think it's funny because when you start doing the course, or you start doing whatever the path is for you, because this is one path, and you know, you should give it a go, because it is one path. So I think what it kind of gave me was, doing a Course in Miracles, different people that are sort of like-minded started to show up. So I mentioned I met a lot of people in Dublin, and now I'm doing this psychotherapy course. A lot of like-minded people started to show up for me. And in terms of intimate relationships, it's been very powerful, because I kind of had to look at a lot of the specialness that was at the root of all my relationships, and longer process that, because the programming that was there about relationships took quite a lot of time to sort of let go. And then it's from such a young age here that it can be a slow process. But I've had relationships since I've started the course, and they've all been sort of far more peaceful relationships than they were before. At least, well, from the point that I started to actually take the course very seriously. So the area of specialness and special romantic love in A Course in Miracles is, I think, is probably one of the most important things anybody can look at, because it's really the crown jewel for the ego to keep us here, to keep us in the world, or keep us bought up in this idea of the world. And the world can be my salvation, because you have this special partner, this special relationship. And I talked about this actually recently in a video about the special relationship. It's one of the most difficult things to look at. And certainly, you know, I kind of almost hesitate to talk about it, because if anyone, you know, as a beginner, when they hear what the course has to say about special relationships, it can be off-putting. But there's nothing but good news in it. It's very liberating when you accept what it says about special relationships, because you start to realize that in having a hierarchy in people, you value some people and you value others less. You're not really hurting the other people. You're actually hurting yourself, carrying that sort of programming around in your mind. So it was, I am in relationships now is I'm far less controlling than I was, and far less sort of, I don't really have any expectations in relationships anymore. Nice place to come from, because anything that does come is it's met with more gratitude and more serenity, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, now this kind of loops into the vision that you're currently cultivating as far as your career interests, because in Ireland, as well as in England and America and everywhere else on the planet, there has been, we have a history as humans of abuse. We're abusive to each other in the home. We're abusive to each other in society at large, and that pretty much is something that has caught your attention as something that you want to help the Holy Spirit address that for all of humanity. So give us some of your thoughts about what's taking you in that direction now.
Well, yeah, it's I wouldn't even say, Chris, it's caught my attention. It's a funny thing, because recently I've had a sort of a letting go of any idea that I have a mission that I need to take care of. And as soon as I kind of did that, and I just said, well, okay, I'm here. Use me whenever way you want. Different sort of opportunities started to show up, and one of them was in the area of abuse. And there's a new initiative here in Ireland now, and it's starting to focus more with the perpetrators of the domestic violence. And I do the perpetrators because it's not a very Course in Miracles word, because it implies guilt. But the one thing that attracted me to this work was, yes, it's working with the men who are involved, but it's focused far more on taking responsibility for the outcomes or what actually happened, the abuse, rather than an emphasis on any guilt or any shame that the perpetrators feel. And I think if you can get to the cause of, it was probably the guilt and the self-hatred initially that obviously that leads to this sort of really horrible image that we see play out in families. And that's sort of the key route. If you can get the person to walk back the steps to say, okay, well, how did I get there? Where did this originate from? And reverse cause and effect. So to realize, yes, it happened in the mind. That's the root cause of these problems. And of course, it's the hidden dream that we know from the Course in Miracles. This is the sin, guilt, and fear that is at the root cause of the belief that leads to these external problems. Because, we do see problems in the world. And I suppose it's a thing in the Course that I used to sort of try and think that if I saw external problems in the world, that I must not be doing the Course properly, because I'm supposed to just see love everywhere. And now I have a sort of a different interpretation of that. It's a deeper understanding of it. It's like, of course I see problems in the world. Of course I see broken relationships and heartache everywhere I look, but the secret is to realize that was sort of that was the intention of the world. That was the plan. Of course, that's what we see all around us. But the freedom comes in seeing that was the intention, and there's nothing wrong with you or with anybody really because of the state of the world that we see around us. It's just a matter of seeing to the root illusion at the bottom of it all, which is none of this is real. I am not a body. This is playing out in my mind, and this is sort of a demonstration of the inner guilt that I'm holding and the fear that I'm holding. So it's all about sort of, that's why I'm drawn to psychotherapy. It's the only form of therapy that I'm interested in, and because it gets to those beliefs on a very, very root level. So I'm really excited about this work, and I'm hoping that it can help a lot of men sort of get to the place where there's a complete lack of judgment, and they feel safe to come to an environment where they're going to just sit down and be met with absolutely just a space where they can be honest and feel that if they are, you know, open about what actually transpired and not deny it, because denial of that of these problems is a huge problem. And it's a cultural problem, I suppose. But to get these men to a point where they can say, yes, this actually happened, and it was, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it any longer. This is what happened in that relationship. Or to separate themselves, their true selves, from what actually happened, and realize it was just a mistake in who they thought they were as a man that led to that decision to do that. It was a belief in scarcity, and it was a belief in self-hatred. I suppose that's what a miracle is. It's when you can bring somebody back to that point when the person is ready to do it. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And it's starting in September. So right now we're going through some training for this. And it's great to see so many people who are like-minded here in Ireland and have the same sort of ideas. And they don't necessarily have a Course in Miracles background, but they can see that maybe strategies we've used before in this haven't been that effective. A new way we're trying now, so it's exciting.
That's very cool. Well, now I know with your website, you are very visible as you know, being a practitioner not only of psychotherapy but also of A Course in Miracles. What are your colleagues? What's been the feedback or the bounce back from your being very out there with you know, labeling your approach to healing the mind as based in A Course in Miracles? Are you finding that people in academia are curious or receptive or, you know, confrontational? What's been the adventure there?
It's a dual strategy, really, because in the psychotherapy world, I have a lot of colleagues, and there's a far greater openness to it in the psychotherapy world. But maybe it's a confirmation bias, because the psychotherapy path that I chose was more of a holistic one, and they're not all as spiritually based as the course that I did. But my colleagues there aren't that many people that know about it. There's a few people that know about it, but I talk about A Course to them, and I mention, listen, there's this thing that I've been doing for a few years. It's called A Course in Miracles, and you should check it out if you're interested in it, because I explained that, you know, it was channeled through somebody called Helen Schuckman, and it's this huge, big, thick book this size, and it can kind of put some of them off reading it or even attempting it to begin with. But there is a genuine, I think, curiosity about it. And also when I tell them about, you know, there's actually a practical side. It's not just a book you pick up and read. It's very practical. This is about fixing errors in perception in your day-to-day life. It's not just a theoretical thing. It's about applying what it says. And you know, you've got these workbook lessons that you can do. I think the people in the psychotherapy part of it are always looking for new tools. So that's exciting. And as I mentioned before, there's already a lot of teachers here in Ireland of A Course. So they're doing some fantastic work. And started off quite small a number of years ago. Michael Murray was doing some workshops in Ireland, but since then it seems to have grown a great deal, and it's getting bigger every year. Now in the academic side of things, I don't really bring up A Course in Miracles that much, because one of the things that kind of turned me off psychology to some degree, or cognitive psychology, was this complete lack of, well, obviously there was no talk of spirituality, but there was no real talk of even emotions in some of the textbooks, or you know, what it means to be truly human on a very deep level. Talk about memory and, you know, different parts of the brain and neuroscience, and, you know, that stuff's all really interesting and great, but domain that's quite there yet in terms of talking about the metaphysics behind A Course in Miracles.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, there is that school that reduces us to a slab of meat labeled the brain. And they really have a serious struggle expanding beyond the idea that perhaps the mind really isn't confined to the brain, but the brain is, an identifiable thing that we can point a finger at and say, well, this is where my mind is contained. And that is both humorous and tragic at the same time. So when you first started working with the Course, what was the, I guess the written word, the sentence or the paragraph that really captured your imagination and caused you to say, oh, I need to pursue this. There's something here. This is different. This is unique.
Well, I think it was coming from the sort of the atheist in me, the very skeptical me. Before any sort of section, and you don't have to look too far for anything that's going to inspire you in A Course in Miracles. It was the whole origin of the book and how it came to be. Because I like the fact that Helen had the same sort of background as I did, and was probably, I think she had turned her back on spirituality as well. So she wasn't this spiritual guru who had sat down and written a book that she wanted the entire world to go and read. She did it sort of in a way that was reluctant to the message. And I think as she received a lot of the book of the channelings, she herself was sort of disagreed with what a lot of the teachings were saying. She couldn't sort of get on board with it. So she was a reluctant prophet in a lot of ways. And that was really something that I liked. I liked that. And another thing I like about the Course was the fact that it's not organized. There's no need for any organizations or any church. It's just something, it's a self-study guide. It's a book that you can sit down and work with yourself, and it should be applied to your own life. And that was it. I was sold. I said, well, it can't be that bad. It's that's the way it's starting out here. But the section, I suppose, at the very beginning of the book is nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. And the entirety of the Course is holographic. So it says that if you understand any of the book, it's a big, thick book, but if you understand any of the sections in this thing, so nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. One line alone, you could think about that. You could sit down and you could try and figure out what that actually means. But the way I read the Course is it's very, very slow. I read the Course maybe a paragraph a night. It's not the kind of thing, it's not real page turner type of material. It takes me a long time to read the Course, and I think it was probably written to slow you down so you can kind of like digest it piece by piece. Because for some of the classes I tried to run on this, and I've run before, I'd sit down with the intention of, okay, well, I'm going to cover a chapter in A Course in Miracles in this group, and I'll do up like a PowerPoint presentation or something, and later I'm still on the first paragraph. So it's sort of, there's so much depth of knowledge in it, and it can take you in so many different ways. But at the end of the day, it's always saying the same thing. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. All the illusions, all the things we think are important here in the world and that we're preoccupied about, they're meaningless. And it sounds very simple to say that, but it's, if you truly accept that teaching, that's where everything changes. So nothing unreal exists. And it's a profound teaching, but there are many others. Through the workbook lessons, I think the one that stuck with me, and I think maybe it stuck with me because it was so, the emphasis on the lesson is that you repeat it so often, it's that I'm not a body. I am free. So I think if I'm ever struggling for a lesson that I need to recite, that's the one I keep saying. Because to me, the understanding of what it is, I'm not a body. A body is not simply the shell I think we think we're encased in. It's everything that we think is important here. It's your associations with friends. It's the role you see yourself, fulfilling in a career. It's your self-image. It's your status. That's all. That's what your body is, I think. And it's saying you're none of those things, because all of those things can be threatened. And if they can be threatened, they're not real. Anything that's sort of at risk, which is everything here, your focus, your values need to change to something else, which is something that you probably haven't been focusing on a lot, which is the inner relationship. The only relationship that matters is the one with yourself and the one with your creator. And when that changes, everything else changes. And all these ego thoughts that come up for us, it's fun because they continue. They're still present. But what happens is after a while, you just start to notice them and you start to realize that they're not bad and they're not good. They're silly. All this stuff, all this preoccupation with the world we have here is silly. And the Course says, the Son of God, into the mind of God crept a tiny mad idea at which the Son forgot to laugh. So really, the solution to all of this is just to more about the seriousness with which we take life here, and all these ideas that we're invested in, and the future, and protecting ourselves from uncertainty and sickness and whatever. The idea is just to relax and laugh a bit more, and I like that.
Yeah, that's what definitely comes across, the millennium, the centuries, as far as a single thought that probably rang out the minute we had this crazy dream. It was, this is a beckoning to bring us back. I've often quoted that Voltaire thought or quote. I think it's attributed to him, but we don't know if it was actually something he said. But he said, God is a comedian playing to an audience that's afraid to laugh. And that definitely is the content of this world. Everybody is in a state of apprehension with the expectation that things are going to get worse and that God's behind it. So I know for myself that I'm especially fond of those regions in the Course where it slides into iambic pentameter. And I didn't really fully grasp what the depth of that was until, it was pointed out to me that basically iambic pentameter is the same rhythm as the heart. So when you are reading something in that rhythm, you are integrating it into the heart, which is the symbol of, the spirit, the soul that we are. Is that something that you've noticed when you get into it? Can you get on a kind of a flow cycle and roll with it every once in a while?
I wouldn't say I roll with it, but I understand what you're saying about the rhythm. It's so beautiful, and it does resonate with some sort of energy in me. It is sort of speaking to my heart a little bit when I read it, but I don't read it. I don't go on long flowing sessions with it. I read it very, very slowly. For instance, it's just like little things. It always seems to be when I open it up, it will help me with whatever issue I'm at now. So I opened it up today, and one of the things I've been talking about lately is practice in a course and the resistance that I have to it, because my sort of understanding of A Course in Miracles has changed recently to less of a focus on the external and bringing it all back in here to the internal. And the line that came to me here was, the ego's whole continuance depends on its belief. Course. So it's depending on this thing that you will never be able to accept what this is saying. And that's exactly what the ego wants you to believe. And for me, it's just always like every time I open the page, it seems to have the exact right message for what I need to hear, that which I don't think is a coincidence. So it's always been sort of very, very helpful and mystical in that sense, that it's always there for me when I need it. But the course groups that I go to and the conversations I have with people, it is a self-study course, but probably most of all is talking with other people such as yourself, Chris, and talking about the resistance that I have to what this book is really saying, our message and the depth of that message, and being more loving with myself and more understanding to myself when I don't do what it says. Because there is, if we didn't have the resistance, there'd be no need for this course. So, it's about, accepting that this book, you don't have to be perfect with this. And whatever you can give is enough for today. And even recently, I'll notice that sometimes I wake up in the morning and I suppose in theory I should start my day with quieting myself and going to source. And some days I just do not want to do that. It's too much for me. But helpful is to be more honest about why I'm doing that. And the truth is that I'm getting to a deeper level with the course, to become afraid of what it's actually saying. And just to sit with the resistance for a minute, not necessarily to do anything or consult spirit or invite spirit, but just to sit with the resistance. That it's not because I'm too busy. It's not because there's a million things going on distracting me. I'm afraid today. I'm very afraid of this. My ego is threatened by this. I'm going to have to give up control of the little me that I think I am. And that's okay. And that doesn't mean I'm a bad student. It doesn't mean that I'm doing it wrong, because that's what the ego said. It says the ego's continuance depends entirely on you believing that you cannot learn what this course has to say. So, when in some ways, the resistance when it comes up is a sign that you're doing something right. So there's no real way you can go wrong with this course. Just be patient with yourself and at every step of the way, and you're not alone in it. You've got your higher self there to guide you, and you've got your brothers that are going to be a great source of help and support in the journey.
Well, now, if people would like to get in touch with you for dialogue and maybe even for therapy sessions, et cetera, where can you be found on the web so that you can start to interact with hopefully a whole more expanded community of people interested in the course?
Well, the best way you can do it is I have a YouTube channel, and it's Dr. David Maloney Coaching. And I don't have it called. There's no real ACIM tag on it there, because as many people as I can. Now, all the teachings that I have are pretty much based in A Course in Miracles. But that's one way you can see, you can get in touch. And I have two websites. The first one is specifically for students. So not students of A Course, students who are in university or in college, and they're going through that same difficult period I went through in my life. And on that website, the website is nextlevellearning.info. And on that side, I share with students all the sort of secrets I have to stopping the ego mechanism destroying your experience of university or college. And a lot of it is I sort of entice students in with this idea that you're going to get better grades doing what I tell you. And that's true. But the truth of it is that really that's not my motivation. That's a nice byproduct of it. But the really nice thing about this is when you quiet the ego, the internal battle between the superego and the id, which is, Freud's way of looking at the mind. which completely forgot to mention the Holy Spirit. It's that battle needs to be quieted, so really what my goal is to help students regain self-respect and self-love on their journey. So that's one of the ways you can learn more about that. And if you're interested in Skype coaching or just some of the articles I have, my website is davidmaloney.com, Dr. David Maloney. And I have a lot of, so it's quite a new website, but I'm putting up more course information and writings that I have on that. So there's probably the best ways, Chris.
Great. Well, and I'll post it on the video here that we are generating right now. And as just a final summation, what would you like to share with us as your final thought?
Well, my final thought is one of gratitude for the synchronicity that sort of, I think, started this conversation in the first place. You benefit from sharing ideas on the course. And maybe in future, I'd also look forward to maybe, you know, having further conversations based on maybe specific sections of a course in miracles with you, because I know you've been studying it for years, Chris, and you've got a wealth of information that I would benefit from tapping into. So I look forward to futures together.
Yes, I'm very excited about the way things are unfolding here, and you and a multitude of other people that are all coming together. You know, when we really stop and analyze it, there have been about 2 million copies of A Course in Miracles sold, which means that maybe it has actually affected between 3 and 4 million people. And then you put that next to the fact that we have 7.5 billion people on the planet. Our course community is not even like a slice in the pie. It's not even where the knife has been inserted in the pie. And as humorous as that is, I think that's also an exciting challenge for all of us, because the more that we are communicating about it, sharing, you know, these loving interchanges, the more that is going to continue to unfold. And I do feel like we're going to see the impact. I think we're already feeling the impact in some ways, but I think we have a brilliant future ahead of us as students and teachers of A Course in Miracles.
Well, I totally agree. And yes, relatively speaking, there is probably a very low number of people who study the course or who have had it impact their lives. But the course says that nobody wakes up alone. And, you know, if I receive a miracle, it's the sonship, the entirety of the sonship that receives that miracle. And everybody's mind is healed together with one tiny step in the right direction. So it's probably not even a case that everybody needs the course or has to study the course. I think there's just like, the idea is probably like a critical mass of people have to study it, and other maybe paths as well that are more loving and can increase the amount of love that we have for each other, and the likelihood that we will come together and see that we don't have opposing wills, but we all have the same will. And you know, hopefully that day isn't too far off.
I think we're right on the threshold of it. Well, thanks so much for this discussion, David. And over the next couple of days, I'll be in touch with you know, a link for our broadcast and some other things to chat about.
Chris, thanks a million. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.